Welcome to Truth Telling with Elizabeth D'Alto, the podcast dedicated to focusing on the truth that is always evolving within us and around us, where we explore the potentiality of truth as a highly esteemed value at a time in history when most people have more on their plates than any one human should. If you're new to me, full expression is my jam. Some words people have used to describe me range from speaker, trainer, coach, healer, writer, spiritual advisor, teacher, podcaster, and someone even called me their soul Sherpa once. I'm less concerned with titles or labels and more interested in results, change, and creating a world we want to, can, and are proud to live in. A kinder, gentler, more curious, collaborative, reverent world where people respect each other's backgrounds, experiences, and truths. They trust in themselves, in life, and recognize that we need each other. And they know how to cultivate healthy relationships to true power, not the very unhealthy kind of power our current culture is predicated upon. Speaking of our culture, there's a lot of noise and ignorance in our current culture, and this show aims to cut through that by exploring the truths of a diverse range of incredible voices. From authors, artists, creatives, and educators to activists, speakers, and those in various scientific and esoteric fields, our guests hail from cultures and countries all over the world. We post a new interview every Monday, and if you want to keep up with the show notes and quotes from our guests, you can follow me on Instagram at Elizabeth D'Alto. You can expect a wide range of topics when you tune into this show. Everything from health, communication, money, success, parenting, desire, sex, love, and spirituality, to making pivots and transitions in life, and topics related to psychology, storytelling, gender and race issues, emotional intelligence, activism, advocacy, and much more. A few disclaimers. No episode of the show is meant for everyone, and every episode is meant for whoever needs it on the right day at the right time. Not all guest views will reflect my own, and that's intentional. We don't learn, grow, heal, or improve by staying in our comfortable bubbles with all of our people who look, think, or live exactly how we do. If you love what you hear and find it useful and inspiring, the best way to show your appreciation is to share the episode, subscribe to the show, and leave us a rating and review wherever you listen in from. Thank you so much for being here with me. Here we go. This is episode number 269 of Truth Telling with Elizabeth D'Alto. I'm your host, Elizabeth D'Alto, and today's guest is Michaela Boehm. Michaela was actually on the podcast almost 3 years ago. Her first episode was episode number 19. So we've come a long way since then, and Michaela has also come a long way. So many things going on in her life. She just published a book. She lost her entire home, her entire property in a huge fire last year. And that's one of the things that we really dug in around in this episode, how she was able to move through the grief, the shock, and the trauma. She was all the way on the other side of the world teaching in Amsterdam when she got the news, and she had to get home to her property. Everything was still under evacuation when it happened, and so it was really cool to hear how someone who's been in deep practice and teaching and cultivating these skills and these tools for such a long time use them in the face of a really major life event and a tragedy even. So we talked about that. We talked about the difference between cultivation and devotion, which I really appreciated because this is something that in the self-help and the spirituality and the personal development worlds, people want tools and people want practices, but not everyone is willing to show up with the discipline required. So I talked to Michaela about how to be in your feminine, which is something that she talks about in her upcoming book, that she has developed a nonlinear movement practice around. And how do you do that while also having the discipline to sometimes do things like stick to a strict diet so you can have the energy you need to show up for your work or travel or have the energy for 16-hour work days as she was putting in when she was working on her book. So we explore, what I really like about this conversation is we explore the application of a lot of the things that she teaches and helps other people with as well. So this is definitely going to be an episode that you want to listen to more than once. Take some notes, share it up with your friends. And the show notes, because we have a bunch of resources, we'll tell you how to get your hands on Michaela's book, are over at untameyourself.com/TT-269. Again, that's untameyourself.com/T as in truth, T as in telling -269. Let's get into the show. Yeah, so fun, everyone. We have Michaela Boehm back on the podcast. Michaela was on, and it was like 2 years ago, maybe more than that. It might have been like 3 at this point.
Yeah.
I'm losing track of time, which is weird anyway. But since we last had a conversation, I've got to spend some time with Michaela in real life. We literally like ran into each other in Paris when I was traveling last year. She has written and published a book. Her entire life and home burned down in a gigantic fire. Your work has taken a totally different, not totally different, but, gone in a different direction from where you were before. So much. We have so much to talk about. I'm pumped.
Good.
So the place to start is always the question we start with is, what is a truth that's having a big impact on your life right now?
I read this morning when I read the little email that you sent out, and I was like, shit, here we go. and you kind of said it already in when you said with the fire, right? The truth that is really impacting me this year and since the fire is how impermanent things really are. And it's, one thing to know that intellectually, and it's another thing to see it in other people. But when it actually happens and you wake up in the morning and you feel fine, right? And half an hour later, your entire existence has gone.
Yeah.
And everything that comes with it. And this is not the first loss I've encountered in my life. So I was just reminded again that the truth of things being incredibly volatile and fickle, and anything could happen at any given time. And I think one of the big things that keeps us sane in a certain way as humans is that we pretend it's not happening.
Right.
Because you somewhat, like you're on this high wire and any moment it could be over. But that's actually true.
Yeah. So what was that like? I think, were you in Amsterdam, I think, when it happened?
I was in Amsterdam when it happened. Yeah. Yeah. It was, it's hard to describe what it was like because several things happen simultaneously in my existence when stuff like that happens, right? So, of course, there's all the normal feelings of, oh, fuck, like that you want to lose it, of course. You want to completely lose it. But the set of circumstances was such that I couldn't lose it because I woke up at 5 a.m. in Amsterdam, having to pack up, clean up the Airbnb, and get to the airport to take a plane to Munich and then a car to Salzburg, where my parents live. This was at the end of the teaching season in the winter. I was going to go home for a few days, and then I was going to go to London and shop and play a little bit, and then I was going to go home for Christmas. So as one does when one is in an Airbnb, I was cleaning and doing everything, and then I was waiting for the Uber, and I was scrolling through Facebook as one does. Not anymore. I've disciplined that, but I was waiting for the Uber, scrolling through Facebook, and I see that a local Facebook group we have here in our community had a little note, like how they give you notifications. It said the group changed from closed to open because of the fire. I'm like, fire? So I call my husband, and it's like the most insane moment. I'm going, I heard there is a fire. And he goes, yes, the house is burning. So I called him when he was watching the house burn down.
Wow.
Yeah. And so then he, of course, had to go because he had to get out. He had a broken leg. He couldn't evacuate. He was trying to save the house. It was a total, pandemonium. And I essentially didn't know what to do with myself. Do you scream? Do you cry? Do you, like shit yourself? That's the feeling I had. Well, full disclosure, like you don't know what to do, right?
Yeah.
You pass out, you want to scream, but what I had to do is get in an Uber.
Yeah.
And go to the airport and function and make decisions on how was I going to get home, what was going to happen. And so it set in core, in effect, like a whole 36 hours or so till I was home because, of course, getting home, getting a last minute flight. And then I had to talk my way through the evacuation line because, of course, it was still active fire and burning, and the whole house, the whole hill behind my house was still on fire. But I managed to make it up. And I came home on Wednesday night. The house had burned down. Monday night was one of the first houses to burn, the first area. And, you can't see anything. You have to wear a gas mask. It's, the oak trees on my property are still burning. And so I set my ass down on a meditation cushion in the meadow behind what used to be my house. And I sat there all night in the dark and waited, for like the sun to come up is going to make me cry again.
Yeah.
So brutal. And at the same time, it was really, really good because it was this feeling of face it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Look at it, look at it as what it is and as it's happening. And it was hugely helpful because I spent, 4 hours sitting there and slowly, other than the embers of the oak tree and what was still burning, I could see the whole, massive devastation, and I could be with it. And then I had to get up and get shit done.
Yeah.
Because I have animals and fences had burned and some of the animals died and some of the animals were missing. And, it was, pandemonium is a nice way to describe it.
And I'm wondering, as a person with such deep practices of your own, who teaches that, and so much of it revolves around embodiment. I mean, to even be able, I'm sure some people are listening, like, what? She sat there and was just with it for 4 hours? Like, what does that even mean? But I feel like that's probably something you were able to do because of who you are and what you do and your deep practice and like your years and years and years, like on that meditation cushion and all the things. Like,
yes.
I feel like this is like the ultimate embodiment experience, no?
It is. It certainly took everything I had to stay with it in my body. And, as you know, I've developed a whole method that centers around releasing trauma from the body. And I essentially did that for the 11 hours it took me to get home on the plane.
Yeah.
I just on the plane, moving, wiggling, moving, crying. And I just allowed myself to cry. And I really didn't care, I bawled in front of the customs agent because, they look at your passport and like, so where are you coming from? Where are you going? Where's home? And I'm like, I don't have a home anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was an interesting time because I had to be both totally open to the extreme pain so that I could function, because I knew if I'd shut down everything and I'd become essentially catatonic. So it was an extreme experience. And I've had this once before when my previous teaching partner died. It was the same thing. It was so bad that it was ecstatic.
Yeah.
It's an odd thing to say, but it had an ecstatic quality because it was so insane that I had to constantly be with my body. And I'd wake up the first couple of nights. You'd go to sleep with a mask on and all the windows closed and air purifiers on. And still in the morning, there'd be soot on your bed. And, no electricity. First, we didn't have running water, no food, of course. We had nothing. Everything was gone. I had literally all that was in my suitcase. And I had packed lightly because I didn't want to shop in London. Right. So I didn't even have clothes. I was in my work outfit, the first 2 days or so. And I would roll out of bed and I wouldn't even stand up. I'd just roll out of bed on my hands and knees and start moving my body.
Yeah.
And then, you do what you have to do. And it certainly helps that this, so to speak, wasn't my first rodeo, but it certainly also helps that I have a lifetime of practice, and resource within that practice.
So where were you in your book writing process? Were you done writing the book when this happened or no?
Well, I was done writing the book. The book had been submitted in the fall, and I had received the the second round of edits back, and I had to
Yeah.
finish the edits by December 15th. And the house burned December 4th, and I figured I'd be home December 6th or 7th, and then I was going to just do the edits and be done with it. And then I got an extension till January 15th, and I had to I didn't even have a place. We had no internet. And there
Yeah.
was we didn't have phone service, even cell phone service till after Christmas. So I had to just suck it up, majorly and discipline myself to sit down. And I did. And I'm really glad I did, because of course, in a situation like that, any kind of pettiness or gripe with edits or any of those things kind of go out the window. And it was pretty much like, okay, well, let's see what needs to be done.
Yeah.
And then I delivered the book, the final stuff on January 15th.
Having had to go back through a book you'd already written after having this deeply life-altering experience, what was it like? Did it change anything? Did you tweak anything? Was anything different in the editing after you just had that, or did everything was just like the same?
Everything was the same, and I'll tell you why in a second, but I did want to write about the experience, but I decided not to. And the reason I decided not to was kind of a twofold consideration, one of which was it was so fresh.
Yeah.
And I hadn't had a chance to actually examine what was happening.
Yeah.
And two, it would have been odd to tack that on somewhere, right?
Yeah,
It just didn't go, but it didn't really change what I wanted to write about. On the contrary, what was really interesting, and this was kind of a very odd situation, my editor lived also in Ojai. So through just, she lives there. The publishers are New York publishers, but my editor lives in Ojai. Her house wasn't affected, but she was, the smoke and all of that. And she actually said to me, we did like a cleanup day the moment we could, so my animals would be okay. She said, watching you makes me know that the practices in this book work.
That's cool.
Because she thought that the practices were too simple, and they weren't very esoteric in their application. And there was a lot of, as you know, because you know me a bit, and I'm not the goddessy kind, meaning we're not doing stuff that's outside of the realm of existence. And I think that was a bit of a, I wouldn't say I think, I know that was a bit of a, who's going to do this? But then, of course, it became apparently clear that these were actually the things to do.
It's cool.
And so that was very, very cool. Yeah.
So interesting.
Yeah.
So I really am so curious. I want to know, here's the order I want to do this, because I want people, I do know quite a bit about you, but I want the audience to know a bit more, especially in terms of like the content of the book and like what it's all about. But, and then I really want to have a conversation about discipline, because in my experience, this like wild feminine, this wild woman, as I've been embodying that over the last several years myself, the thing that I've had the biggest challenge with is discipline. Mm-hmm. And you are pointing towards this discipline that you had to have to get through this experience. But then also you and I were chatting offline for a moment, and I know you're on a super restrictive diet, which to me is like absolutely out of the realm of possibility for me. So I really want to know how you're navigating that. But first, like, walk us through, what is the Wild Woman's Way?
Well, the Wild Woman's Way is a whole body of work that I've created over the last 25 years, and in my personal practice, over 30, which is insane in itself. I can't actually believe I'm in my 50s now. It's crazy. 51 to be exact. But it's a whole body of work that deals with the engagement with our body. And I see the wild woman, and with it the wild feminine, as the part of us that's connected to nature and to the tribe and to the wisdom that's been passed down through millions of years, really, because as long as humans have existed, the natural instinct is the thing that's kept us alive. And everyone alive today, this will change pretty soon, but everyone alive today is alive because they were connected to their instincts and they did the right moves and listened to their bodies. That's definitely changing. And hence I wrote the book. So it doesn't change all the way. But it's the wildish nature, right? It's the part of us that's connected to our cycles, to the moon, that can feel things, that's intuitive, that operates within a tribe and community, all of those parts of us. And the archetype, the archetypal engagement with the wild woman is kind of an interesting thing for me because I'm both Jungian trained and was trained in a lineage that does deity yoga, right? Where you become and merge with a female deity via visualization and embodiment. And so, which is, I found out, of course, when I studied Jungian archetypes, it's the same engagement. You let yourself, or I should say, you avail yourself of the world wide web of natural information, right? You plug into something that's much bigger than you. And so the wild woman's way is an exploration through the body into becoming the woman we are, not the woman we think we should be, or the woman, that's aspirationally something that she thinks she could be loved for, but us as and the glory of that. And it's a set of exercises and explorations and embodiment practices and considerations that make it so you become you, like the glorious, glorious you. And then from there, you can learn skills and you can add flavors to your experience.
Yeah.
Right? Without compromising the very fabric of who you are.
I'm obsessed with this. This is like the whole basis of everything I do. I've articulated it as reclaiming and redefining womanhood for the 21st century. But I sometimes question even the choice of those words because we're not redefining anything. It's just like what
finding.
was all finding. We're just like finding what's like always been there. But I like the way you said that. It's like not this aspirational thing that you believe will make you lovable or attractive to others. Yes. That is so challenging. And I know you've worked with so many people. It is unbelievable to me the depth to which our conditioning has a hold of us around that.
Yes. Crazy. Right? And not just from men or the patriarchy, but more so in a certain way from women, from other women. And that's not a popular thing to say because there is still this big belief that the sisterhood heals all, but that's not traditionally true for a number of reasons, right? Now, we can have that and we should have that, and certainly that's the natural way in a certain way. But even within the natural way, when you look at tribal structure amongst women, there is, so to speak, fighting and jostling for rank within the structure. And when the structure has been established, then everybody can relax. And then everybody knows their place. So competitiveness isn't the issue. It's when people can't let it go.
Yeah.
Right? When they can't let it go. And that's why I'm saying sometimes it's other women that make it so much worse because we all have grown up with these insane standards.
How?
Right?
Yeah. I'm curious. There's a word that comes up a lot now, which I actually really love, but I'm curious how it fits into that tribal structure, is sovereignty.
Yes. Sovereignty is one of my favorite words.
Yeah.
Yes. Because that's the thing. You can't, and you'll hear me say this over and over and over and over and everything I teach in podcasts and in the book, is you can't actually relate with anyone sexually, intimately, friendship-wise, business-wise, till you know where you begin and end. And till you know, and this is to me is the answer to everything from consent questions to sovereignty and everything in between, is until you can reliably notice, listen to, and translate into your mind the messages of your body, you can't be trusted. Yourself and somebody else, you just can't be trusted.
This is a major mic drop because this is something that I've come to realize trust is another big, huge core thing in my work, trusting yourself, right? And my hypothesis, if you will, or thesis statement is you don't need to worry about whether or not you can trust others. Like some of us are like, I have trust issues. The only trust issue is whether or not you trust yourself. Because once you trust yourself, things with other people kind of take care of themselves.
Yes.
But one of the things that I've realized in my own like exploration and study and embodiment of trustworthiness is exactly what you just said. When you know yourself, where you begin and where you end, that is only then can you begin to trust and be trustworthy. And I've realized I can't trust people who someone could be honest but untrustworthy, because if they are not connected to and they don't know themselves, I can't trust you.
No.
Because you're unplugged from something that is the actual truth.
That's correct. And then you have these experiences. Mind you, I've had them too, right? It's not like you completely grow out of them. I remember specifically in my 20s, in my late 20s, I had that a lot. You have an interaction with somebody, right? And then you leave. And then at some point you go, wait, this wasn't okay.
Yeah.
Right? And so that, of course, is the source of all kinds of trouble, because if you don't know it wasn't okay till you're in the car or at home or 3 days later or 10 years later, you cannot actually stop it. Mm-hmm. You can't set a boundary. You can't assert your needs. You can't protect yourself. You can't get rid of it, right? So you're powerless based on the fact that your head and the deep intelligence that is your body, the early detection system that is your body, are not synced up. Yeah. But it's like the Bluetooth connection between those two pieces has irretrievably broken, right?
Not connected to Wi-Fi.
Not connected to Wi-Fi, right? It's happening in the body. It's always happening in the body. The body never misses a beat, right? But can we hear it? And then once can we hear it, can we translate it into cognitive understanding and usable action?
Usable action for the love of all that is holy and sacred and real.
Yes.
Okay, you said something before that I want to come back to for a moment that relates to this, how all of this is changing. How and why?
Well, I think one of the reasons it's changing is that now we have a life in which being connected to ourselves is no longer necessary, for the most part. Because when you look at how much time, now I'm not talking about everyone, of course, right? And all circumstances, but when you look both out publicly, when you observe people and the people I know or teach, right? How much time we actually are plugged into another piece of information, software, so to speak, in the form of computer, internet, your phone, apps, social media, all of that. You can essentially operate mostly from the head if you wanted to. And of course, the inertia of the body nowadays, because we are sitting a lot, right, and driving and flying and, whatever, it's in front of the TV. One of the things that really astounded me last time I was on a trip in the US was how many people spend that much time in front of a TV. Just incredibly sedentary lifestyle. Mm-hmm. And so the body needs movement to detect things, to report them, also for health and all other kinds of reasons. And we no longer have that. So things are changing very substantially. The amount of inflow makes it so we get dull and numb. Mm-hmm. And also, we are no longer, for the most part, in actual life-threatening situations. So our early detection systems are, first, because we are so much more numb, and certainly because they're no longer used as much, are not as active. Yeah. People are not as clued into things anymore, and their bodily reaction to things isn't so good anymore. I watched the other day, there's a little school close by my house, and there were some people walking on the ex-football field, and somebody somewhere else, was practicing and throwing a ball. And this woman was on her phone texting while she was exercising. And the ball came and hit her in the head. And for the most part, humans are wired that if something comes at you, you will at least flinch before it happens, even if you don't see it, right? Because we have these mechanisms that allow us to have some radar around us so that if some big predator comes and looks at us from behind from a tree, we can, our spidey senses. She had zero awareness that something, and the kids were screaming and, and it has all happened in 4 seconds or so.
Yeah.
But that is what's happening. And of course, that also means we're not only not connected to our environment and the dangers of that, but we're certainly not aware of what's happening in our body. If she can feel it, a ball hurtling towards her, it's highly unlikely she felt any pain in her body somewhere.
This is really interesting, and I love the timing of it, because the other day I was driving around here. I just moved to Marina del Rey. I was in like Venice or Santa Monica or something, and it was almost having, I felt like I was watching a movie or a TV show or something, and I was just like watching all the people walk by. Literally everyone was on a device, and I was like, none of these people have any idea what's going on around them.
No.
None of these people. And for me, just the way I was raised, but like old school Italian grandpa from Brooklyn, right? My parents, like every time, Puerto Rican grandma, every time I leave the house, someone was reminding me to know my surroundings, to be careful, to be safe, and to essentially be like watching my back and know what was going on around me. So I'm so wired that way that like no matter where I am, sometimes people perceive me like I'm not being present with them. It's like, no, I'm present. I know exactly what you're saying to me and what you're doing, but I also know what's happening in like every freaking corner of the room. And if there's like a threat or someone shady walks in, like it's happening because I'm like literally plugged in, and just realizing how disconnected people are from that. But you said something that I'm super curious about. You said that it's not necessary anymore.
Well, no, you can survive without
Got it.
that.
Not like
right?
vital.
That's what I mean with
but not that
vital.
It's okay.
No, not that it's okay.
Okay,
but,
I was like, what?
But what I mean is in the past, and not so distant past, in a couple of 100 years, if you weren't clued in to what was happening around you, you wouldn't live that long.
Yeah.
You probably didn't get to procreate.
Yeah.
If you did, hopefully the next generation learned something from it. Nowadays, you can live an entire life without knowing these things and still survive.
Got it.
Right. So it's not necessary, meaning
basic survival.
Basic survival isn't really, I mean, of course, there's still areas, there's war-torn areas and things where basic survival is all there is. But I'm talking us in LA or us in New York or, like Western civilization.
Yeah. That is so interesting to me. And this is why I'm so appreciative of people like you. This is why I'm so passionate about like embodiment work, like be in your body. All right. I have another question for you. This is a selfish one because something that I've been in inquiry around and kind of exploring lately is in your body of work, experience, beliefs, teaching, practice, do you see any distinction between the wisdom of the body and the wisdom of the heart?
Oh, that's a good question. That's a great question. On one end, I would say to me, they are one and the same. And on the other end, how I would probably distinguish it for myself if I would have to. And certainly we do that a bit when we work with, the kind of more sexual domains of co-ed practice and stuff like that. I would say that the wisdom of the body is somewhat free of emotional content. So, whatever happens in the body happens in the body. And some of that registers as power, some of that registers as fear, some of that registers as anger, some of that registers as arousal. But like, for instance, arousal can be arousal for sexual reasons, arousal because you got really angry, arousal because hormones happen, right? So arousal in itself doesn't have an emotional component. But of course, the heart, and when we say the heart, what I mean, of course, is the living, feeling, emoting, plush, beautiful and awful set of sensation that is our feeling dimension, right? That feeling dimension, of course, influences the body, and the body is certainly influenced by our feelings. So you can't take them apart.
Yeah.
But the cultivation of the heart, to me, has it has a devotional quality to it.
Yeah.
Right. So does the body, of course, right? Meaning, and this brings us to the piece of the diet and discipline in a moment, right? The cultivation of the heart and the cultivation of the body has to be in the service of something greater than yourself, ideally. When I'm saying has in my world, right? This isn't the gospel. It's just the gospel according to Michaela.
Yeah.
It's not the gospel, right?
Thank you for like making that. This is my issue with like the guru type people who were like, this is the truth. It's like, it's a truth, homie.
Yes, exactly. And
Yeah.
it's heavily influenced by your preferences
Yeah.
and your own body mind, right? And that's the thing that we always have to remember. But for me and in my work and in my personal exploration, the heart is the cultivation of compassion towards others, compassion towards self, love in all its form, the good, the bad, and the ugly, but in service of something greater than us, in the service of love or in the service of the divine, however you want to phrase that for yourself.
Yeah.
And so to me, the bodily wisdom is the wisdom of letting the body does what the body does best.
Yeah.
The less you can fuck with that, the better. that heart cultivation, that to me has a whole other layer of exploration and richness and vastness in the body.
Yeah.
And they can't be separated, of course. But if you would, then that's how I would separate them.
I love that because since I've gone through this whole, and this, this healing experience since my last relationship, which was very intense and very traumatic for me, I was very tuned into the body wisdom, but the journey into the heart has been something that I'm like, this is different. There's a different texture here. And that distinction, I've been like working on the distinction myself, and you pretty much just articulated a lot of what I hadn't put into word yet. Quick break in the show to share a little story with you all and invite you to something if you're interested. Since 2013, I've come to know that my intuition is always a few to several steps ahead of my current consciousness, understanding of things, expectations, and life experiences. This is why trust and surrender are vital to my practice, because typically if I'm being guided or nudged towards something, I'm not going to know why for a while. Sometimes it's weeks or months, sometimes even years, or really a combination of all three, as the full why tends to reveal itself over time. So recently, I was saying some prayers before meditating and asking for guidance around this thing that I've been struggling with for a few years now. It's something I go up and down with, make some progress on, regress, and I have a lot of awareness around it. I'm gentle with myself about it, but I haven't quite been able to conquer it. And so if you want to hear more about what that is, head on over to the Patreon page. That's patreon.com/Elizabeth Untamed, which is patreon.com/Elizabeth Untamed. Those of you that listen to the podcast regularly have heard me mention the Patreon. I've actually had it since June. I just haven't put a ton of effort towards telling people I have it. I needed to get through moving in July, get organized, and clear some space for it. But there's actually already a ton of awesome content up there. There's 4 Wild Slow Movement practice videos, 4 bonus podcast episodes, a couple of writing pieces, including this one that I just started reading to you, that I don't post on social media. And that's part of the purpose of Patreon, to be able to have exclusive content for people who listen to the podcast or appreciate what I post on social media, but in a place that is safer, where we can come together as a community, where you could leave comments and things like that. You can get to know each other and connect with each other from all over the world and reflect on what's being shared over there. So again, if you're interested in going a little bit deeper than the podcast, but not making a huge investment to do it, check out the Patreon. Again, the link is patreon.com/Elizabeth Untamed. And now back to the show. I love the words cultivation and devotion.
Yeah, so do I. Yeah.
Yeah. What devotional practice, and this is a lot of, this is your work. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, to me, I'm always very, very careful. And like you said, it's not the truth, right? And there's many other ways to get where I want to go.
Yeah.
But to me, the devotional quality of everyday life is what I live for, both in my work and my personal life. So I want to be able to have the most ordinary task, or I should say, I want my most ordinary task to still be a devotional act, because most of my life are ordinary tasks.
Yeah.
Right? So when I look at how much time I get to spend in organized practice or organized engagement around the things that are very meaningful to me, and how much of my life is spent doing ordinary tasks, I'd say it's probably 80-20 on a good day, So those 80% need to also be counted, and they need to count, because otherwise, why do them, right? And so my teacher particularly was very, very adamant on learning how to just be, just be. And so, my washing the dishes, I often talk about washing the dishes because for some reason I really enjoy washing the dishes. It's one of the things I've done even as a teenager. My parents would have these huge parties, and I'm super introverted. So I just went into the kitchen and took care of the enormous amount of dishes. And I loved that because there's nothing else happening. You wash the dishes, but washing the dishes is an act to the divine, right? There's no part of me that's not devotional when I wash the dishes or scoop horse shit or write a new website or whatever they are.
Yeah.
You have to just remember that. And the way you remember it is essentially through the body, right? The embodiment and a certain kind of disposition. And so the disposition is one of serving something greater than oneself.
Yeah.
Not in a woo-woo, new agey or martyr way, because that's also important. It's not martyrium, right? It's just you get on with it.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a little aspect of suck it up to that. Yeah.
There is a little aspect of suck it up to it, but that's really minor. So how it occurs in my body, because I have lots of those moments, is let's put it this way. Let me say it differently. When you have to do things, they require energy, right? They require the same amount of energy regardless of if you want to do them or don't want to do them.
Yeah.
However, if you don't want to do them, the not wanting to do them runs a counter current to the thing you need to do. So you have to go here, but this goes this way. So you're actually creating drag on your ability to do it.
Yes.
So by not refusing the reality of what you have to do, this is true for emotion, relationship, and the washing of the dishes, you are removing the drag, and you now have this energy that pulls back while you're trying to pull forward to harness into that direction, or it's free energy to do other things.
Yeah.
And so what to me lies at the very, the bare bones of devotion is that you go, well, there's something bigger than this, and I'm using my free energy to orient towards this for the sake of all beings, so to speak. That's the feeling, right? I'm putting words on something that's a feeling, but bodily sensation of that is an expansion, a forward expansion.
Yeah.
And it's an opening of the heart and it's an opening of the body. So when I suck it up, I don't suck it up as a denial. I suck it up for something greater.
I love this so much. I don't suck it up as a denial. I suck it up for something greater. And correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the things I wanted to ask you next was, what is the difference between, or how do devotion and cultivation interact with each other? But I'm feeling like this is probably the place where that happens, yeah?
Yes, there's an intersection, right?
Yeah.
And so devotion in itself is beautiful in whatever way it takes, but devotional action has an element that needs cultivation, and that is skill. So, and this is, by the way, where a lot of people get really, really messed up because they conflate those things. They conflate spiritual practice with skill development. They conflate skill development with personal development for the sake of becoming a better, human or better lover or something like that. So devotion in itself is happening. It doesn't require anything. It's just there. It's to tap in, right? But for us to be able to move devotion as a body and as a mind and as an emotional body, there's cultivation needed. And the cultivation usually has to do with developing the skills necessary to make the body devote in the way it wants to devote.
Yeah.
So, there's classic examples of this, of course, in music, where it's the easiest to say. You can be divinely inspired to play the piano for the sake of, the benefit of all human beings. But if your body doesn't know how to play the piano, your body is incredibly ill-equipped to open our hearts into ecstasy via piano playing.
Yeah.
So as much as that's sometimes poo-pooed in the spiritual circles, you're going to have to sit your ass down and practice the piano.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's the only way you're going to skillfully, you can do this and hope it opens people's hearts, but you could also just learn the appropriate skill for the instrument.
Yeah.
And then use your skill that you have cultivated and combine it with the devotion you have into a full experience. And any good artist in their own right knows that, right?
Yeah.
Any good lover in their own right knows that in a certain way, if they have both the devotional, quality and the skill level. And so cultivation is essential for allowing your being to do the things you want to do.
Yeah. So you're connecting a dot I didn't know I needed to be connected. There's two things in my life in the realm of creative expression that I've always felt like a longing towards, like a devotion to, but that I couldn't express because I don't have the skills yet. And I've been like slowly developing them, but not with any like major dedication or consistency, because I think consistency is a real part of the cultivation, and that is dance and comedy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Just started doing stand-up comedy, and I'm like novice. Like, I'm a naturally funny person, but in terms of like writing jokes and being funny on purpose, I'm literally like step 1A,
Yes.
right at the bottom end of the being. And the same with different types of dance. Like, I've been taking salsa lessons for years. I'm a decent salsa dancer, but like I take these long breaks. There's no like this consistent cultivation and practice of my skills. During periods of when I do it consistently, that's when I up level. And that, I think, is the cultivation, if I'm understanding right. Yes?
That's the cultivation. And that brings us to, how do you combine your wild feminine nature with discipline?
Yes. Right? I do not want to be disciplined, Michaela.
Because you are devoted to something that gets you out of bed onto the dance floor, right? Or out of bed and on your table writing jokes. And so the key there to proper discipline is that you're moved.
Yeah.
Right? That you're moved in some way greater than yourself, greater than just an outcome, right? If all that, let's put it this way. If you are not this, but let's just say, right, somebody goes, I want to be a stand-up or an actor or whatever, right? But let's say a stand-up comedian, because then I'll get chicks,
Right.
right? Or then I'll make money and people will love me or whatever, right? Then that's sufficient a motivation for some people because they feel lack and they want to fill the lack. But if you're actually not coming from a place of lack, right? But you're coming from a place of fullness. You want to learn something because it will make you fuller
Yeah.
and more joyous and more embodied and more alive. And yes, it will probably make you a different human being because anything we learn adds to us, right? In a mostly good way. Well, some things not so much, but what you'll have to feel is that the motivation and the drive has to come from the intense devotion,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then that engenders cultivation. That makes it that you go, okay, I don't want to, but I'm going to do this. And then that is a much better motivator than accountability models, which I'm very much against. This is a whole other story, right? I think if somebody else has to hold you accountable, you're forever infantilized. And so so which is that's a whole other pet peeve of mine, when we talk about men's groups and stuff like that, but we're not talking about men's groups right now. You need to find what it is that makes you want to do it, and then that creates discipline, and the discipline can't come from lack or fear or just a rote brutalizing yourself for the sake of getting shit done.
Yeah.
That's not ideal, and that has big repercussions in the long run. So you were asking me earlier, how do I reconcile having at the moment very, very strict eating regimen
Yeah.
with being who I am? Well, because I'm incredibly I don't know how I can say this. I'm incredibly lit up and motivated and devotionally motivated to be out there and travel and teach. So my life in the last 4 or 5 years has gone very strongly towards teaching internationally and many, many places and many workshops. And I now train people, to have teacher trainings and all kinds of stuff because I have a very strong feeling that I have to give these things forth. Part of that has to do certainly with my age, but that's the least of it. I would say that the motivating factors are when I received the lineage, which happened almost 4 years now, about 4 years. It was like, oh shit, nothing happened at first, right? It was like almost like an, oh well, oops, that's really, I mean, not oops in a oops she died, but oops, I had no idea I was going to be the one who has to bring it forth, right? Because I really didn't think about that. I had a life to live. And then the next step was, oh shit, this comes with a huge weight. And the weight was the weight of having to find somebody to pass it on to. And then the next thing was, wait, I already have people to pass it on to. This is what I do for a living. Oh, maybe I should, teach more. That was the thing. So that all said, I have a very, very, very strong feeling of doing this for the benefit of whomever I can touch.
Yeah.
And of course my own. I'm not saying I'm like saint-like in that way, right? I'm
Yeah.
really enjoying it. And it's also how I make a living. But that drives me taking care of my body in a way that it functions optimal.
Yeah.
So this brings us back to the cultivation of the vehicle of your transmission, so to speak, right? My vehicle, meaning my meat body, for some reason, and I only found this out while I was writing the book, because that's when I started it, because I was home for once and, I was sitting all day. So I had to look at what was I eating, all of those kind of things, because I did like 14, 16-hour days during the writing of the book and sitting, right? So I discovered that having this very, very restrictive diet was giving me optimal performance and optimal mood. Because I'm, of course, also now at an age where hormones are starting to go all over the freaking place, right?
Yeah.
So I had to look at how can I do what I do and function well
Yeah.
and feel okay. And that's what it was. So it didn't come from a place of, oh, I need to lose weight or, oh, I need to stave off aging. Those are all benefits. It came from a motivation of how can I get off a plane in Melbourne after 18 hours and function, right?
Yes.
And
Yes. Damn.
and that was the thing. So how can I cultivate the skill in my body needed to function after an 18-hour flight well, right? And not be messed up by jet lag too much or brain foggy. And this was the answer. So I still feel as wild and crazy as I ever have in my, in my disposition.
Mm-hmm.
But I no longer use eating as a way to express that at this moment in time. Now, mind you, I have moments where I'm like, fuck it, and I have little cheats. I want to say that, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Ever so often, I don't have my allotted carbs, and I have a glass of wine, right, or a piece of chocolate, and so it's not like it's not like these things are ironclad because you always have to strike the fine balance between denying yourself and doing what's best for you. And that is a very, very fine balance.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
I, for one, cannot live with denying of myself in a
Right.
certain way. Right. But I actually, at this particular moment in time, don't feel it as such. I just feel it as optimal situation for what I'm doing. And this is, by the way, true for most of my engagement that has to do with discipline,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is where I'm going, well, this is just the easiest and best way to get this done. This is how I want to cultivate certain things, and that cultivation takes this.
Yeah.
So,
I appreciate this so much. It's really helpful for me. I'm hoping it's also super helpful for people listening. Over the last several years, and I've talked about this on the podcast, people know this is something that I've been just like kind of like wrestling with after being in fitness for many years and also living on the East Coast. Like there was a distinct when I moved to the West Coast and just the lifestyle went from being someone who's like walking probably miles a day, public transportation, doesn't have a car, to someone
yeah.
who's like driving, and then also going from being a personal trainer where I'm like out and about to running an online business, like in like a huge fell swoop, the amount of physical movement in my life drastically decreased. But and then I also was in a situation where I took on some like comfort eating. So I started to eat in a much different way and move much less, and my body changed. And
Yes.
I've been holding on to anywhere between 20 and 30 pounds over like the last 4 or 5 years that has never felt like it's mine. And I'm not saying this in like a body image, thinner is better or whatever, but just like literally my physical body has felt like this is weird and what's going on here. And having a desire to change it, again, not because I want to, like what you said earlier, fit into like the aspirational thing that I think will make people feel attracted to me and love me, but because I know that like the quote extra weight is a physical expression of these choices I've made and this different lifestyle that isn't necessarily in alignment for me. But there's just been so much like emotional and weird and like there's been so much for me to sift through around it. And so I've recently been coming to a place where I've started moving more and realizing how I'm going to do it, like whatever way I'll actually just get it done. Like it has to be enjoyable, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And this really, really resonates for me. Like the discipline as a function of both the cultivation and the devotion to the bigger thing.
Yes.
Because I've noticed, like with my former partner who would like shame me about my body, I was never motivated to like lose weight to look better, so he would stop doing that. In a way, I was like almost like a middle finger, like maybe I'm just gonna gain more weight. Maybe you'll actually leave if I do that. It was like weird, unhealthy dynamics,
Yeah.
right? But like this, I'm now motivated. I'm like, cool, if I look better, great. But I need to function differently. So that was very helpful.
Yeah, I think that's the really important pieces. It has to come from a place of functionality, and it has to fit with whatever else is there, right?
Yeah.
And certainly, I don't even know how to say that. Nothing trumps moving your body.
It really doesn't.
Nothing. It's, I mean, it's one of those things. I sometimes say this in workshops when we start, when we do like relational or sexual practices, people stand across from each other. We do like warm-ups and stuff like that, and people don't want to move. They just came from the office. They just want to go straight into the juicy stuff. And it's like, no, 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 no. Sex and relationship still happens in the body, and so far you can't armchair it. You can't think your way into embodiment. You can't think your way into feeling. You must move your body. Your body has to come online, and that is still so true. And I think most of the things emotionally as well as physically that weigh us down can be accomplished or can be looked at by moving. But who has time, right? And that's once again, that's when you have to look at what's optimal for your situation, your circumstances, versus what's the prescribed truth.
Yeah, I'm really curious, due to the deep embodied nature of your work. Is it, I don't want to make an assumption, but I would guess most people showing up to your stuff are like very able-bodied?
No, actually, no.
Oh,
not
cool. Because
really.
that's what I wanted
No.
to know. I wanted to know for people who have, restrictions around their ability to move their body,
Yes.
how this lands and
Yes.
works for them.
Well, like for instance, I don't think you know much about it, but nonlinear movement method, which is the thing that we use
Yeah.
for trauma release and for pleasure practice and stuff like that, can be done laying down. It can be done in a wheelchair. I actually know somebody who does it in a wheelchair. It simply allows for the body to engage in its natural mechanisms of release. Right? We have these natural mechanisms of somatic release that come through shaking and moving and allowing the body's flow to wash things out. And so even if you're not able-bodied, meaning you can't go to the gym, you can't run, you can move your body. You can do this in a chair. And it's essentially the engagement, that the fluid engagement of your body somewhere. And sometimes when I've worked with people who are very traumatized, I used to see people in a rehab, all they could do is this. That's all they could do, or blink. And that's often enough in the first step to create motion in the body.
Yeah.
And I just want to add to that. Yes, ideally you want to do things that give you cardiovascular benefits and all of that. But that's not where you start. Where you start is unfreezing yourself from that hunkered down state that's either caused from injury or trauma, past experiences, or habit.
Yeah, yeah. And so for anyone who's listening, not watching, when Michaela said do this, she was literally just flicking her little pinky finger.
Yes.
I appreciate that, and I'm glad, because just something I'm really more conscious and aware of are, I'm a super able-bodied person, and for many years, even when I was in fitness, it didn't occur to me, of course. And I'm in gyms, I'm in that environment with like the dominant able-bodied population, and so it's good to know that these things are also accessible at different levels for people who don't have that.
They are. And, a lot of the nonlinear movement practice actually really came together after I had this really bad knee injury, that I couldn't do anything. I couldn't walk. I was very, very active. And as you know, I have a piece of land that requires lots of walking around and doing things. And I couldn't walk. I just couldn't walk. Right. And I was doing quite a bit of yoga back then and, practices of that, and couldn't do either of those. And so all I could do is be on my hands and knees and sometimes on my back in a static position and move my spine and move my neck and, kind of stretch things out so that I wasn't going completely inert. And over time, that was added into the things I was already working with people.
Cool. I love this. So to wrap up, is there anything I didn't ask you, especially related to the book? I mean, obviously, when I interview people and they have books, I'm usually just like, go get the book, people. We don't need to like tell you everything that's in the book, because that's why it exists. But anything I didn't ask about the book, or anything you want to share about that, just like on the way out here?
Yeah, well, I think one of the things that I'm very excited about in the book is that there's essentially 3 components to the book. So there is the kind of informational component that really educates on how the body works, why we can feel things, how the body processes pleasure and trauma and all of those things. So there's a very good educational component to it. Then there's a whole section that's kind of like my view on things. And my view on things, of course, is a combination of having done over 40,000 counseling hours in my lifetime, right?
Yeah.
And teaching and my own stuff. So I'm super happy I got to talk about how do you choose career and children and partners and dating. And so that, I'm really kind of gleeful about having been able to delineate these things with hopefully a slightly different viewpoint. And then what I'm most excited about is that the whole third part of the book is practices.
Yeah.
So it was really cool because I got to read my own audiobook. And so I got to narrate my own practices. And
That's amazing.
That was pretty good. So yes, I'm super excited about it. And of course it comes out next week. And it's both thrilling and a bit scary.
Yeah, and so at the time of recording this, it's mid-August. So by the end of August, it'll be up. And you know what? We had someone clear. I think this might go up on August 27th because I had someone cancel and I couldn't reaccept them. So I think we'll bump it up. So by the time people are listening to this, they will be able to get the book.
Yes.
So Michaela, you know how much I enjoy you. I appreciate you so much. I have a really, really deep appreciation, especially for women who are just older than me, who've just like been on the planet longer and been practicing longer and who have like paved the way for like the kind of work that I do. I just like have a lot of respect and appreciation for that. And the way you share yourself. And something I really especially noticed during this conversation that I love is how you take your time to go, how do I want to say this? Because I feel like there's so much damage and harm that is done from teachers because they just want to have the answer and they just want to like spit it out and they want to be right. And I just notice and appreciate your commitment to really saying the thing that is like true and accurate and in a way that aligns for you. So thanks for demonstrating that.
Well, you're very welcome. And I want to add to this because it is very important in this moment, right? And that's the thing. One of the things that is sometimes hard to stomach is that things I believed 10 years ago are no longer the things I believe now.
Yeah.
Right? There's things that are always alive, right? And the through line, but there's also things that change. And I think it's really, really important to know, this brings us back to your first question. What's the truth? Well, the truth is everything's constantly changing.
Yeah.
And so our mind, our body, and our viewpoints have to change with it.
Yeah.
Like it or not. So thank you.
Yeah. And where's your favorite place to direct people? So The Wild Woman's Way is the book. They can get it on Amazon and bookstores everywhere, right?
That's right. And my website, michaelaboehm.com, which I'm assuming you'll spell out on the
we'll put it
show notes.
Always in the show notes.
And you're the first one to hear this because we talked about it before. Next week, the new website will be live.
Yes.
So it's brand new website, brand new offerings, lots of really cool photos of all the things that no longer exist. Because I had photos taken of all my altars and all my deities, which I'm so grateful now because they live on now on my new website. And I'm very, very happy
it's like poetic too.
It is poetic. And that's mostly why I'm so excited about the website because every single page has photos of these deities and these things and power items and everything that I've collected over the time. And now that's gone, but it's still there. And I get to
memorialized in a way.
Yes.
Cool.
So next week, new website. By the time you post this, new website will be up.
Amazing. Cool. So we'll all get to see it. All right. I don't really want to hang up, but we kind of have to. So thank you so much. You're amazing. I'm excited for the book myself. And I hope everyone else will check it out too. So, all right, Michaela, we'll see you later.
Bye.
And unity, that whole concept of unity really does, at its core, it says that folks have to conform to be together.
Right.
And when I'm in solidarity with you, I don't necessarily have to agree with everything you do. Right? But I know we're going the same way, right? Like we're trying to make that same outcome, right? But it is not the sense that you and I have to be you. Like, I have to literally fit in to be accepted.
Yeah. So the distinction I'm hearing is unity requires conformity, solidarity does not.
No, from my perspective, it does not require conformity. And solidarity is a way to show up so this unity tries to give you this undivided entity, which we know isn't true and doesn't happen.
Right.
So, and solidarity, I don't have to be you to understand your humanity.
Yes.
I don't have to have your lived experience to know that you deserve health care. I don't have to be a woman in a wheelchair to know that woman in a wheelchair deserves all of these things simply because she's human.
Yeah.